All right. I've always wanted to be in a comedy club and be like the greats, you know? Perfect. All right. Well, thank you to Wharton Storytellers for bringing us together tonight. A big round of applause. All right. Oh, I'll just hold this guy here. All right. So when I was invited, they convinced me by saying, there'll be like 30, 40 people here. It'll be easy, no problem. Wow, look at all of you. So many of you. And also paying $25 to hear a professor speak after hours. A round of applause for all of you in this classroom, all right? All right, enough of the small talk. Let's get to the real stuff here. Let me get a sense of the room. How many of you are here married or in a committed relationship? Yeah, that's what I expected. All right. How many are single, unsure, or here on a date tonight? All right. That's good. Okay, I can resonate with that. Perfect. Now, that's what I'm talking about. We live in such a crazy world, so different than my parents who migrated from India to this country last century. 1980s was last century. My God, time is flying. They always told me how hard they had it, walking in the scorching heat to school, eating dry chapatis or wheat tortillas for lunch every day, dipped in water. Ugh. And my favorite, using a 2-inch pencil for the whole school year to do all of their homework. I admit, I had it much better than they did, living in life of luxury. Beneficiary of back-to-school Target sales. I have so many supplies that I still prepare Wharton lecture notes on binder paper from the 6th grade. A few years ago, I was able to tell them, finally, that my life was way more difficult than their lives. Way more difficult. We were having discussions about dating and meeting special friends. By the way, in Indian culture, you're presumed celibate till you're 25. And then overnight, with a little bit of magic dust, you're expected to grow up, get married, settle down, have children, you know, the good stuff. Oh, and the talk, you know, the birds and the bees, we don't have that either. So I still don't know where babies come from. Yeah. Now, how many people here are familiar with arranged marriages? Yeah? Thank you, Seema Auntie and Netflix for exposing the secrets of how the Indian marriage market works. That's how Indians get hitched, right? Sounds pretty cool. Well, guess what? My parents had it even easier. It was even easier in their time, right? You had a crazy auntie or a family friend, and she was the equivalent of a human DoorDash, right? Human DoorDash. She would literally come to you out of the blue after this magic dust had been sprinkled on you and present you with a menu, okay? And in a few short minutes, you have to pick the person you want to spend the rest of your life with. Crazy. Now, it actually works, right? It actually works. So to my annoyance, I realized my life was so much more difficult than theirs because I didn't have access to this market anymore. I'm born and brought up in North America, born in Canada, migrated to California, and my parents lost all connections to the old country, and certainly to the underground arranged marriage market world. Right? So in that way, they totally broke tradition, right? They totally broke tradition. Plus, I was getting a PhD in history. So you can imagine what my market value was. Okay? By the way, I'm just curious, would your parents let you date a historian? Yeah, there you go. I had basically no market value. And it didn't help that a grueling PhD at a top Ivy school basically was so grueling that I actually had a full head of hair when I started the program, okay? So my market value was already bad enough, not to mention losing half a head of hair. I would have fared very poorly on the human dating system that's the human DoorDash I was talking about, okay? Online dating doesn't work. So there I was, a long list of exes, pressure from family to get married, bombarded with useless advice from all corners, and best of all, no practical help whatsoever. Does that sound familiar? Okay. Now, I'm sure some of you in this class, not class, I'm not in a class. I should have had that second beer. So now I know most of you can relate to the pressure of expectations, right? From family, from friends, from peers, society at large. Expectations can make you feel lost and uncertain about the path that you are taking. Certainly a PhD in history, that's for sure. This is in my late 20s, right? This is exactly how I felt. Whether in class or on city streets, I truly felt alone. And growing professional accolades, fancy fellowships, people telling you how great and path-breaking your work is, that stuff meant nothing to me. Very little. So what do? In 2016, I shake things up. I pack a suitcase with Costco socks and my favorite snacks from Trader Joe's. Socks and snacks, that's all you pretty much need in life. And I left for India to research a book, my first book, which just came out actually in January. If you're curious, it's about bankers funding warlords. If that doesn't get you excited, I'm not really sure what will, okay? One evening, I'm in India researching my book, and I'm taking a walk in the market. It's a very popular market in New Delhi, and I run into a familiar face. I studied with this cutely dressed young lady with killer eyeliner game during my master's some years earlier. But actually, we never spoke to each other. We recognized each other, said our pleasantries, and decided to get a cup of chai. Indian milky tea. I tell her I'm doing a PhD at Penn. She doesn't flinch, that's a good sign. And I will return to the US for good in about a month or so. A journalist, she says she'll be traveling to Leh, a mountain city in the Himalayas, to write a story. Do you want to join? She asks earnestly. Now, I'd never been invited to a trip. No, I've been invited to things before, but just not a trip. I've never been invited to a trip so grand and so last minute. I am, after all, what they call an ABCD, an American-born confused desi, right? Yeah. I like to plan shit way in advance, so you can't pull that last-minute stuff on me, right? My eyes gloss over, and she says to me, sensing appropriate hesitation, "Chalna" in Hindi, which basically means, yo, let's go. What else you got going on? And it's true, I had nothing else going on. 2 days later, we are on a 22-hour trip from New Delhi, the capital of North India, riding from the plains all the way up to Leh. Now, if you haven't been, Leh is one of the most majestic landscapes you can imagine. It'll surpass any ski weekend in Colorado, I promise you that. Snow-capped Himalayas, pearl blue river that's shining and shimmering, and your lungs greeted with the electrifying purity of the best oxygen that money can't buy. But our goal was to make it even further, a place called Khardungla, some 8,000 feet above base camp at Leh. Here we would ascend to one of the highest motorable roads in the entire world. We rented a cherry-hued Royal Enfield, an old vintage motorcycle that you might imagine your grandpa riding with his mustache all twirled and twisted, and a bike with a beautiful glossy black gas tank and a leather seat with a tapestry of creases and faded tones. This was evidence enough that many other bums had perched their way up to the mountain and back, so we were in good shape. Now, I'm no chump. I had driven motorcycles before, okay? But this was very different. On our left, hair-raising cliffs, and on our right, endless valleys. We buckled our lids, and I kick-started the bike. Whoa, I never did that before. That was cool. I could feel the thumping roar of 500cc engine through the throttle, into my veins, engulfing the pretty young lady perched behind. She hugged me, I'd like to think out of affection, but probably taking Professor Leo's advice, when things go bad, hold on, trust, and keep moving forward. Okay? I gave the bike a healthy wrist twist, and we forged ahead. Our first stop, a military checkpoint. Only Indian nationals were allowed beyond the barricade. An American passport holder, this was the one time that an American passport didn't help. I was certain to be sent back. She nudged me. PhD logic will not work here. I'll do the talking. The officer asked to see ID and papers. Before I could proceed or process what was happening, she gazed into the officer's left eye. She knew that if you do that, he would be convinced. Sir, we left our IDs at the homestay, but my uncle is in the Air Force. This was equivalent in India of, don't ask any more questions. After inspecting the bike, he let us go. And me, thinking to myself, I asked, your uncle's in the Air Force? That's amazing. The back of my head picked up a smile. What uncle? As we made our way up to the majestic peak, the fresh scent of juniper engulfed us. The clouds settled in, and the sweet dew of the Himalayan fog could be tasted on our lips. At almost 16,000 feet, we came around a bend, a makeshift wooden hut with a chimney of smoke dancing up to space. It was a chai stall. You'd be hard-pressed to find a public bathroom in India, but chai stalls are plenty, even in the remotest of landscapes. Shivering from the altitude, we huddled around a fire, sipping gingerly goodness. The elderly Tibetan couple running the place asked if we were married. Our awkward silence gave away the incorrect answer. And the lady turned to me and said, "Agar yahan tak saath de rahi hai, aage mat dekho," which means if she has supported you until this juncture, don't look further. Pretending not to hear such sage advice, I tugged at my classmate's jacket and jumped back on the bike for the final push to the top. Just 100 short feet of the peak, near 18,000 feet, the air thins out, making breathing quite difficult. The bike sputters out. Gasping for air, my classmate jumps off the back and says, "Come on, let's give her a push." We were slipping and sliding, the gravel was thin, and with a little strength and a few laughs, we finally reached the summit. As prayer flags fluttered in the wind, we just looked out silently on top of the world. Weeks later, I was back on Locust Walk, wondering if it was a dream. We continued to live our parallel lives. 3 months into being in grad school, something tugged at me from within. And that's when it hit me. It's okay not to know where you're heading, to feel uncertain, even on shaky ground. But in a world obsessed with planning and optimizing life, sometimes the best things enter our lives from unexpected detours that we take along the way. And even today, standing in front of you, I'm not always certain about where I'm heading. But one thing feels very, very sure. My motorcycle companion always rides with me. Hi, Junie. Why don't you stand up and meet my new friends? Too bad toddlers aren't allowed in comedy clubs, otherwise a 2-year-old would have been on our laps as well. Now, this is my side of the story, tainted but true. Next year, ask the two Sabrinas and Divya for a faculty partner slam. That's where you'll get the real juice.